All right, your
To the
first
mental
presentation.
health causes of code switching by Meros Adeku. Code switching was a concept invented by linguists to clarify the act of combining languages while in a conversation. However, in a cultural or ethnic context, a wilder sense of the word has now evolved to include the concept of self-expression. Code switching can also play a large role in communications, and the expense of the activity mostly affects people of color. An example of code switching can be a black woman removing her braids or changing her natural hairstyle before starting a new job, or changing the tone and volume of your voice and using different terms, slang terms. Code switching will only shield people of color to a certain extent. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how meticulously you strive to assemble or imitate the actions of a majority. It doesn't alter your otherness in the eyes of many.
All right, so that was Ayan's presentation on code switching. Make sure you get 2 pieces of information at least. Replay it if you need to. Next presentation will be Kenny's, and it's protests versus riots. What are the difference?
So when we look at protests and riots, riots can be defined as civil condition where people behave violently and out of order. Riots can be results of kind of mistreatment, injustice, or oppression due to the authority, government, or people themselves. And they can cause a lot of damage, like the burning buildings or destroying some people's cars. Protests, on the other hand, can be defined as a form of expression over a dislike by a group of people, and these are more peaceful and do not usually go against the law. When we take both terms, we see some similarities as well as differences. Both riots and protests aim to express their dislike of a certain thing to the rest of the society. And credits go to admin for difference between riot and protest, and Calizia Chris. Thank you.
All right, that was Kenny's presentation on protests versus riots. Again, hit pause if you need to, but next presentation is Maddie's on how the riot in 1992, the LA riots, happened.
Important part of my topic is the video of Rodney King being beaten by the LA police, by 4 LA police officers. I feel this because without this video, there wouldn't have even been the 1992 riots. So I feel like this is probably the most important part of this topic, realizing that if somebody didn't take a video of 4 police officers beating someone, that nobody would have even known that this probably happened.
All right, we have one more presentation, and that is going to be on a separate video. It's Benny's, and Benny's topic is George Floyd, things that happened after his death. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you. I'm only going to play the first minute and 10 or so of that, because that's all the time that everyone else was allotted.
And I will be talking about George Floyd's death and what happened after. On the first night of protests after George Floyd's death, Minneapolis streets were flooded with protesters. Some of them were vandalizing police cars with graffiti, and they had targeted the precinct house where 4 officers involved in George Floyd's death were assigned. Later that day, officers ended up using tear gas and rubber bullets to push crowds back. Mr. Walz had activated thousands of additional National Guard troops, but had declined their offer on deploying military police units. He had also said that the situation in Minneapolis is no longer in any way about George Floyd's death. It is about attacking civil society, instilling fear, and disrupting our great cities. After the death of George Floyd, protests had happened in at least 140 cities, and the National Guard had been called in at least 121 states. In a result of the way George Floyd died in Minneapolis, Denver And the result of the way George...
Again, just because we're limiting time, so everyone has equal amount of time. That's the end of Benny's. Again, you can go back and replay it if you need to with the video. Go ahead and make sure you finish your notes. Again,